Welcome to the Jersey Barrier, and I finally get to say it. Thank goodness we're off of the Jersey Barrier holiday special now because I get to say my favorite phrase. We love highways and we hate New Jersey. Today we're talking about a Floridian interstate, a strictly Floridian interstate, the good old I-4. It's the second lowest number in the system, and it bridges the gap between Tampa and Daytona Beach. On 275, in Tampa, we get signed for East Orlando, which is pretty good. At our junction with 75 as well, as expected, we are signed east for Orlando. Very good. We get our first mileage sign, and it was signed for the next exit, Lakeland and Orlando. So Lakeland as the secondary, very good choice there. I couldn't think of a better choice. On our minor junctions, we also get Orlando. So no surprises. I think we're getting Orlando everywhere. So this is very good signage out of FDOT here. After Lakeland, we get a mileage sign for the next exit, and then just Orlando. So only two lines in the sign, but in this situation, it's okay. We will get our exit for Epcot for Disney, and we will also get a pull-through for Orlando. We'll get a little bit better of a view for Disney on the westbound side. And now the express lanes form through downtown Orlando, and we get signed now for Daytona Beach, which I don't think is the right choice just because we haven't even made it to downtown Orlando yet. So this is kind of odd to me, and it's showing the local lanes as signed for Daytona. So if anything, I would sign the express lanes for Daytona. And at the Florida's Turnpike, we still get Orlando. So Daytona Beach goes away again, and we only get Orlando, and I think this is the right choice here. And we get to downtown Orlando, and now our signs are going to be for Daytona Beach, which makes plenty of sense. And on our mileage sign, we get Lake Mary and Daytona. Now, I think I should mention Deltona here. Deltona is actually bigger than Daytona. It's also closer, but I think that Daytona is the right choice since everybody knows Daytona Beach. It's an interstate junction. It's the end of the interstate. It's also pretty large too, so I think Daytona over Deltona is the right choice. But I could see an argument for Deltona. However, Deltona should absolutely be the secondary, no questions asked. And now we reach the end of 4. We get to the end, we get to 95. 95 signed north for Jacksonville and south for Miami, which makes plenty of sense. And we are now going to be, our carriageway will go 400. Turns into Route 400 for South Daytona Beach. And we get to the end of this carriageway, and we'll see an end I-4 sign and begin 400. So that is pretty cool. That means we will turn around and go back the other way. On 95, we are signed west for Orlando, as expected. And on our first mileage sign, we get Orlando and Tampa. So I don't know how I feel about that. You have both control cities on here already, and almost treating Orlando like the secondary here. I don't necessarily agree with this. I think it should just be Orlando and then maybe Deltona or Sanford as the secondary here. But I think having Tampa here is a little bit presumptuous because there's probably a lot of Disney traffic, and also Orlando's a big city on its own, so I would probably just put Orlando, but that's a cool sign to have. So I think if you were to do the Travel America format, this would be perfectly fine. And we see all of our minor junctions are going to be signed west for Orlando and east for Daytona Beach. So all of that makes plenty of sense. I don't have any complaints here. And we get back into downtown Orlando. We get our better view of Orlando. I mean, it looks a little bit better from this side. And we will be signed now for Tampa. So that makes sense too. And we'll also see that all of our junctions are also signed for Tampa. So minor junctions, major junctions, it's all for Tampa. So they're not playing around here. And here's our view of Disney. It's not the greatest. There's not a great view from I-4, but there's Disney right there. And I've actually never been to Disney. I would like to go, but I've rarely ever been in Florida, so I've never really had the chance to go. And after Disney, we do get a mileage sign for the next exit, and then Lakeland, and then Tampa. So this makes plenty of sense again, and I think actually that everything should be co-signed for Lakeland and Tampa. Lakeland is actually getting pretty large, and it'll become almost its own large metro pretty soon. So I think having Lakeland on there is a pretty good thing. You could even argue to sign Lakeland by itself because it is rapidly growing. I think it's grown, the metro area has grown about 16% in the last 3 years, so it's getting to be pretty big. And we get our last mileage sign for Ybor City or Ybor City. I'm not gonna try. I probably butchered that, but it's a neighborhood of Tampa, and then we get Tampa as the bottom line. So that makes perfect sense. And we reach the end of I-4 on the westbound side, and we will get 275. We'll meet it, and it will be signed south for St. Petersburg, perfectly fine, and signed north for Ocala, a little bit less fine. And we do not have any end I-4 sign, which is kind of unfortunate. But that'll bring us to what was signed. They signed it pretty simply. It seems that they signed everything very reasonably. They signed Orlando eastbound with Lakeland as a secondary, and then Daytona Beach. And westbound, they signed Orlando, while also throwing in a little bit of Tampa, and then they signed Lakeland and Tampa, or Lakeland as the secondary at least, and then just Tampa, which is pretty reasonable. Now, what would Jeremy do? I wouldn't really make that many changes, actually. I think it's pretty good as it is. I would sign it east for Orlando and east for Daytona Beach. Throw Lakeland in as a secondary. Orlando's pretty big. I would throw Lakeland as a secondary for Orlando. And I would also throw Deltona in for a secondary for Daytona Beach. We go in westbound, I would sign it for Orlando right away. And I would have Deltona as a secondary and then Sanford as a secondary. And then after Orlando, I would sign it west for Lakeland. Lakeland's pretty big. I think you can sign it by itself. And after Lakeland, I, of course, would have Tampa. And that'll do it for this edition of the Jersey Barrier. I hope you guys enjoyed. Next week, we'll be talking about I-95, and we'll be looking at the lack of alternatives between Richmond and DC. It's a pretty interesting corridor, so can't wait for that one. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one. Make sure to like, subscribe, so you don't miss another one. We post weekly every Tuesday. And this has been Jeremy with the Jersey Barrier. Peace out.